Story time about how I found out that my mom was sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So it was my junior year of high school, and everybody knows that your junior year is the most important year of high school. If you didn't, well, now you know. My brother was in his senior year of high school, and when he was a junior, he had the same teacher, so he knew how hard the class was. So he would stay up with me every night helping me to pass my history class. Well, the one day I'm at school and I'm taking a test, and I literally did not know anything on the test. And I studied the night before for literally 4 hours straight. So I decided to copy off the girl next to me. Well, a few days later, we get our test back. And I'm looking at mine, and I got a 97%. And then I look over to the girl next to me. She got a 33%. And then I started going through the tests. None of the essay questions looked like my handwriting. But I didn't say anything because I wanted that A. Well, the one night, I'm sitting down with my family having dinner, and I told them that I copied off the girl next to me, and how I got a 97% and she got a 33%, and my brother flips out like for part 2. Part 2 of my mom sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So like I said, I told my parents that I got a 97, she got a 33, and I was telling them how the handwriting didn't even look like mine, and everything. And then my brother starts flipping out. In front of my dad, too. He goes, "Mom, are you fucking serious? You couldn't let her try and do this on her own?" And I was super confused. Like, I thought that maybe he was talking about my mom paid off the teacher. But then he said, "Yeah, Dad, if you didn't know, Mom's been fucking our history teacher to get us better grades." And then he goes, "Mom, you're such a fucking whore." And my mom's sitting there not even fazed. She just took a drink of her wine and said, "Get the fuck upstairs now." Before my brother leaves the table, he goes, "Maybe you can fuck Dad's boss too. Maybe he'll get a raise." And then I realized what was happening. And it's around 6:30 p.m. So after that, a lot of stuff happened. My dad obviously wanted to get a divorce at that point. So my dad took my brother and I to our grandparents, and we stayed with them for like 2 weeks. But then everybody at school found out, and we got made fun of a lot. And then after that, we moved schools.
Story time about how my fiance broke off our wedding because of my best friend. My fiance and I had been together for 2 years, but my best friend and I had been friends for over 8 years, so I trusted her with my life. When my fiance and I met, she approved and she loved him. She was always looking for a new relationship because she could never commit to anyone. Eventually, I started feeling like she was envious of the relationship because I had found someone that I truly loved and that wanted to marry me. On the other hand, she was a serial dater and went out with so many guys she couldn't even keep track. One night we had a double date and she brought this new guy she met. Throughout the whole date, my fiance and my best friend were hitting it off, talking, making jokes, and I was actually really happy because I was happy they got along. Her date even noticed this and commented about how we should switch dates. I thought it was so funny. Well, little did I know that after that night, they actually started texting every once in a while. Inside jokes and memes, stuff like that. I did know about it, and I thought it was really cute, and I was so happy that they were getting along. After all, she was going to be the godmother of our future children. One day I saw she sent him a picture through text message. You'll never guess what I found. Come back for part 2. Part 2. So I noticed my best friend sent my fiance a picture, and he was in the bathroom, so I went ahead and opened the picture. You guys, it was a selfie of her, wrapped in a towel, fresh out of the shower. So of course I show it to him, and he's like, "Oh my god, why would she send that?" He totally played it off, like he had no idea why she would send that to him. So I call my best friend and I say, "Hey, did you just send my fiance this picture?" She hesitated for a second, and then she's like, "Oh my god, please don't tell me I sent him the picture by mistake." And I was like, "Yeah, you sent him a picture of you in a towel." And she said, "I'm so mortified, I'm so sorry, I meant to send it to somebody else." And then she's like, "You believe me, right?" And part of me didn't want to, but part of me had to. I couldn't believe that my best friend would do that, so I said, "Yeah, of course I believe you." And she completely changed the subject and told me about the guy that she was currently seeing who she actually meant to send the picture to. A few weeks passed by and my fiance says he has to go on a work trip. Weirdly enough, she said she was going to go on a trip with a guy that she had just met. I asked her to meet the guy before they actually went on a trip, and she said no because he's really shy. Can you believe they went on this trip together? Come back for part 3.
I am going to be telling you a scary childhood story. When I was 2 years old, my mom passed away. My dad wasn't in the picture, so I went to go live with my grandparents. My grandparents lived in a super old home that was built in the 1800s. I was a very imaginative child. So when I told my grandparents that I used to see people in the house, they just didn't believe me. There was one lady in particular that I would always see. She would sit at the end of my bed and watch me fall asleep. I wasn't scared of her because I thought she was an actual person. Plus, I was super little, so nothing even crossed my mind. At this point, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember her talking to me constantly. She even sang me the song Rockabye Baby to get me to go to bed one night. Every single day when I would get home, I could see her in my window. At that point, I thought she was just waiting for me. She just wanted to be my friend, right? But as I got older, things started to get really weird between me and her. She wasn't this nice lady anymore. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the lady in my room who would sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. No one else in my family could see her. She even told me that she was my mom. I really believed her. If you remember, my mom passed away when I was 2. So, it seemed pretty real that it was my mom. I didn't really remember what my mom's face looked like when she passed away. And this lady, could be my mom. She continued to sing me lullabies every single night when I would go to bed. She would always be waiting for me in the window when I would get home from school. But I figured out pretty quickly it wasn't my mom. My mom was a sweet, kind-hearted person. This spirit was evil. She would get mad at me every single time any of my friends would come over. She told me she could see my future and that I was going to go to hell after I died in a car accident. It scared me so much, but no one believed me. It got to the point where I never even wanted to go in the car because I thought I was going to die. She convinced me I was evil. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the lady who used to sing me lullabies to get me to go to bed. This spirit was evil, and she started to convince me that I was evil too. She convinced me that I would go to hell because I was a horrible child, even though I wasn't. She convinced me that every single person in my life hated me. She even started to control my dreams, and I would wake up every single night screaming at the top of my lungs from a night terror, and she would be sitting at the end of my bed. This went on for years. When I turned 9, my grandpa passed away. And because it was a really big house, me and my grandma moved to a different house. And the evil spirit was just gone. I never saw her again. But was she really gone? When I was 15, I went to a psychic. The moment I walked into the room, she could feel a dark energy enter the room. She told me that someone was following me every single step I took. And when she said that, I knew exactly what she was talking about. After that, I went to a medium, and after many sessions with her, the dark presence was finally gone.
So there's this lighthouse that you can see from my house, and my mom used to tell me a story about a woman who used to live there. No one lives in it now, but there used to be this young woman in her 20s who lived there like 30 years ago. Apparently she came from a really broken home. Her mom and sister died in a horrible car crash, and her dad was an abusive drug addict. So the harbor master let her live in the lighthouse and paid her a small salary for taking care of it. So she had been living there for a couple months, and that's when she noticed weird things starting to happen. Some of her belongings would occasionally go missing. Like one time she couldn't find her flashlight, and she looked for it everywhere. And finally she found it under her bed, which was weird because she knew she had never put it there. But then weirder stuff started to happen.
Extremely creepy story time on how my aunt passed away. So a little background information. About 5 years ago, my aunt had gotten pregnant. It was really weird because a few months before she got pregnant, the doctor told her that she would never be able to have kids. And her husband had been trying for years. Well, I think like 2 weeks after the baby was born, it had passed away. And I don't really know why. For some reason, my mom won't tell me. Which is weird, but anyways, after that, my aunt just felt like a lot of things weren't going the way that she wanted them to in her life. So she decided to get closer with God. Well, every Sunday night, we go to my grandparents' house for a family dinner. And while we were there, my aunt starts going on this whole rampage. She said that God's not giving her the answers that she needs, and I don't really know what she means by answers. So my grandparents kick her out because she's acting like a psycho. Well, the same night at 3 a.m. in the morning, we hear a knocking on the door. And lo and behold, it's my aunt. So my mom lets her in because she feels bad and feels like she's the only one that will actually listen to my aunt. So she makes everybody sit at the kitchen table. And she pulls out a Ouija board from her bag, like for part 2. Creepy story time about how my aunt passed away, part 2. So like I said, she makes us all sit down at the kitchen table and she pulls out a Ouija board. She was like, I found out how I can get some answers. I just feel like I need you guys around me for positive energy. And my family is very, very religious. Like, we don't fuck with that shit. But because my mom felt bad for her, she let her use it in our house. But my mom didn't want my sisters and I around that, so she just sent us to bed. Well, the next morning, I wake up and I ask my mom what happened with the Ouija board situation. My mom just said that it was really scary, because before she thought it was like a load of bullshit, and she said that her and my dad didn't touch the Ouija board, because like I said, they were very religious and did not mess with that stuff. But apparently, it said for her not to buy a house with the numbers 2815. Well, 2 years later, my aunt got remarried, and her husband ended up having 2 kids. So they bought a new house, and no, it didn't have the numbers on it. One of their kids accidentally shattered the glass door, so they went and got a new one, and it came with those exact numbers on it. 2 days later, the house burnt down and nobody survived.
3 months after I was born, my family moved into a different house in a new neighborhood. My mom told me that after we moved, even though I was just a baby, I started acting differently. She said that in the middle of the night, she'd hear me laughing, and she'd look at the baby camera monitor, and I'd be standing in my crib reaching out, as if there was someone in the room I was reaching for, but there was no one there. Once I got older and started talking, my mom told me that I would always talk about the man in the hat, and sometimes I would get upset and start crying and ask my mom where he was because I wanted to play with him. But my mom thought I just had an imaginary friend. But as I grew up, the man in the hat never went away. I kept talking about him. Eventually, my mom got worried and took me to a child psychologist when I was 5 years old. And I don't really remember it, but during the sessions, the psychologist would ask me questions about the man in the hat. But apparently, whenever she referred to him as my imaginary friend, I would get really angry and defiant and say he's not imaginary. And when she asked me what he was like, I was able to describe him in vivid detail. He wore a blue baseball hat and dark glasses at all times, a long-sleeve turtleneck, and pants. After 5 sessions, the psychologist concluded that I probably just had a really intense imagination, which is common for little kids. But the psychologist warned my mom that she should keep a close eye on it.